Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 sports video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 in CFL history. We're doing a few CFL episodes of Cutter Top 10, and of course, rocking the Montreal West jersey and all that. And hopefully, we have fun with this. So, we're going to look at 10 CFL chokes of all time. And figure things out. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. All right. so yeah. Number 9 is my beloved Alouettes in the 2012 Eastern Final. We're at home against the Toronto Argonauts. Stade Olympique should be easy, huh? But no, it isn't. It wasn't easy, as we ended up faltering thanks to Ricky Ray, Frito Ray, as they call him, and the Argos winning in Montreal, getting to play the Grey Cup on home turf. Who did they play? Was it Saski? Can't remember, but yeah, Montreal was up by some points, but lost by 10 at the end of it as the Argos came back to win and knocked the Alouettes out of chance to win the Grey Cup. So that just sucked. Number 9 is the Eastern Final between the Alouettes and the Argos. So anyway, the Alouettes had a few good plays against the Argos and all that. The Alouettes were up by 10 at the half, but Pinball Clemens with that kickoff return for a touchdown, and the Argos winning the Grey Cup. Of course, I was happy because the Argos, were my team at the time. But I switched to the Alouettes once Doug Flutie left for the NFL, feeling betrayed. So I went to Montreal and all that, thinking that none of those quarterbacks will make the NFL anytime soon. So that's what happened, and the 1996 Eastern Final happened, and the Alouettes lost to the Argos. Number 8 is the 97 Western Final between Edmonton and Saskatchewan. Edmonton looked pretty decent and a chance to face the Argos in the Grey Cup for the second straight year. Argos Eskies were the Grey Cup things in 96, and then in 1997, we had a chance to see Argos Eskimos Part 2 because the Argos won the Eastern Final against Montreal again. But then, Edmonton was hoping to take down Saskatchewan and keep it going. Unfortunately, though, on home turf, they got butt whipped. They had a great first half, but then the Rough Riders surged in the second half, and Saski won 31-30, getting themselves the Grey Cup in 1997. Well, the Grey Cup appearance, and hoping to beat those pesky Argos, but Doug Flutie and Paul Masadi and crew led the Argos to win that Grey Cup. So that's just what happened. Number 7 is the 2013 Argos. The 2013 Argos were 16-2 in the regular season. 16 regular season wins. Well, the CFL, they play 18 games. And the Argos were 16-2. That's a great winning percentage. That's an 889 winning percentage. Practically, you win out of every 9 games, you get 8 wins. So the Argos looked pretty impressive and all that. And the fact is that, the Argos of 2013 should have won the Grey Cup. Well, they were hosting Montreal in the conference final. The winner got to go to Hamilton to face off with Winnipeg for the Grey Cup. And then all of a sudden, the Alouettes defense actually went bonkers, getting like 6 or 7 turnovers, and the Argos forgot how to play football. And 2023 Argos. Did I say 2023 or 2013? Sorry, 2023. My notes say 2013, but for some dumb reason. But yeah, the Argos went to the Grey Cup. Was well. Yeah, right. It would be the Alouettes, and they won on the last minute touchdown against Winnipeg. But the Argos got revenge as Montreal hosted the Eastern Final the next year, 2024, and ended up losing to the Argos because the Argos used their defense to crush us and win the Grey Cup. So that wasn't good. Number 6 is the 2005 Grey Cup, Eskimos Alouettes. Montreal had a chance to do something big, obviously. Unfortunately, Edmonton looked good, and Tony Tompkins ran a kickoff return over 100 plus yards to start the third quarter against the Alouettes. So the Alouettes had been down by 10. They managed to tie the game to force overtime for only the second time in Grey Cup history. The first time was 1961. So the Alouettes scored a touchdown first, but then the Eskimos scored a touchdown and then a field goal. So all the Alouettes needed was a field goal to extend the game or a touchdown to win the game. Unfortunately, they made a couple of dumb penalties, and the Alouettes failed miserably. And the Eskimos won the Grey Cup. Not my cup of tea. Number 5 is the 1994 Western Final between Calgary and BC. Calgary were looking good. Doug Flutie was on that team, and they were able to take care of the BC Lions. Calgary knew they would have to face Baltimore, who won the Eastern playoff and all that. But yeah, Calgary had a 17-point halftime lead and looked good. Unfortunately, BC pulled it off with a last-second field goal by Louis Pasaglia, and BC beat Calgary to go to the Grey Cup, held in their backyard of Vancouver, and then they ended up being the Baltimore team 26-23 on a last-second field goal by Louis Pasaglia. But yeah, Darren Flutie getting the best of Doug Flutie. That's just amazing. Brotherly loved. Not so fat. Number 4 is the 2016 Grey Cup between Calgary and Ottawa. Ottawa were a third-year team. You know, a lot of people said, as when I talked about my last video, saying that Ottawa got better expansion rules and all that. They got better players to start with, and most teams didn't get anything. Well, expansion in the CFL rarely happened and all that. So, for one thing, yeah, and you know they were trying to not have the mistakes of their past, trying to make sure that the expansion teams were good, not rebuilding. Anyway, Calgary would face Ottawa. Ottawa would have a 20-point halftime lead. Calgary came back. They were trying to go to the Grey Cup. They were trying to win the Grey Cup finally. They went to overtime, and Ottawa did their job with a touchdown in the first overtime, and then Calgary couldn't counter that. So Ottawa took their first title in 40 years as a city, and the Stamps would have to wait another year before getting that Grey Cup monkey off their back. Number 3 is the 2017 Grey Cup, Calgary-Toronto. Calgary looked pretty impressive, you know, the team that was trying to win the Grey Cup after their 2016 downfall against Ottawa. Of course, Calgary would play in Ottawa against Toronto, which was ironic because Calgary played Ottawa in Toronto in 2016 for the Grey Cup, and 2017 it was Calgary-Toronto in Ottawa. So anyway, Calgary looked pretty good. With 4 minutes left, all they needed to do was run a few plays and run Toronto out of time. But somehow, in some way, the receiver caught the ball from Bo Levi Mitchell, but then he fumbled the ball instead of going down right away and kind of, you know, keeping the clock going. He tried to get fancy or something. He tried to lunge for the line, and then he ended up fumbling it. And then DeVar Posey, for over 107 yards, ran it back. So it was a scoop and score, and the Argos ended up winning that Grey Cup, and Calgary fans were just upset over losing the Grey Cup in such terrible fashion. Number 2 is the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders. I talked about that in my previous video about, you know, the Tony Gabriel play that he was called for pass interference in which he wasn't supposed to be. But the 1981 Rough Riders were lucky to even make the playoffs. In the East, there were the top 3 teams made the playoffs. Number 1 got a bye into the Eastern Final. 2 and 3 would face each other. Ottawa, with a 5-11 mark, managed to get into the Grey Cup playoffs. They would pull off the upset over Hamilton and beat Montreal to get to the Grey Cup to face those pesky Edmonton Eskimos, who were 3-time defending champs. They won 78, 79, and 80. We're looking to go 4 straight at Stade Olympique in Montreal. Well, ESPN did this game too, as Don Chevrier would be calling for ESPN. Nevertheless, It was a great time at Stade Olympique. Ottawa was up 20-1, 20 versus the one for Edmonton. So so Ottawa looked like they were going to pull off a massive Grey Cup win and become one of the biggest shockers of all time because, after all, they were 6 games below 500. And then it happened. And then it happened. They've let their guard down. Warren Moon and Tom Wilkinson led Edmonton back from the brink. It was 23-23 at one time. Tony Gabriel with that call that, negated a pass interference call of the defense, which was stupid. And then Dave Cutler winning the game on a last-second field goal. So, yeah, the 81 Rough Riders blew that. But as bad as that was, they weren't the worst Rough Riders choke. And number one is the Saskatchewan Rough Riders and their choke against Montreal. Saskatchewan looked pretty impressive to win their third Grey Cup after 1966 and 1989. Montreal kept making Grey Cups in the 2000s, but kept falling flat, except for 2002, of course. But as an Alouette fan, I was hoping Montreal would pull it up. This was the first Grey Cup. No, sorry, this was the second Grey Cup that TSN had and not CBC. But anyhow, Montreal was down by 16 points in the fourth quarter. It looked like games that matched for the Rough Riders. But Montreal pulled it back. They missed a 2-point convert. Saskatchewan was up 27-25. And then Montreal had a chance to kick the winning field goal. Damon Duval missed wide right. Saskatchewan gave up the safety point, meaning that they won by 1. Unfortunately, hold everything. There was a flag, and they counted the number of players on the field for Saskatchewan. There were 13. In the NFL, you can only have 11 per offense and defense. In Canada, it's 12, with the extra offensive player being a wide receiver and the extra defensive player being a defensive halfback. So anyhow, there were 12 men on the line. One problem, though, there was a 13th man to kick the ball out of the end zone if need be or concede the single point, because then Saskatchewan would win the game. But unfortunately, though, there was 13 overall, and basically Saskatchewan was penalized. 15 yards later, Damon Duval kicked the field goal through the uprights, and the Alouettes were the Grey Cup champs. And then in 2010, they won the Grey Cup as well. So, it was a great time to be an Alouettes fan, like yours truly. And that's how it goes. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Dunn, to do.